It's a pretty common expectation that a game master know the game they're running better than the players. While not a rule etched in stone, it tends to be that the game master learns the rule system faster than the players, and in the cases where a newer player wants to run a game for more experienced friends, they at least know the story or the lore more than the players. In almost all of my games that I run, I do know the lore better than the players. Granted, a lot of my games are in my own world, kind of a cheat, but, it's the situation. And even with that, not all of the games I run have that difference. I have run a handful of official Forgotten Realms-based campaigns where some of the players knew the generic setting just as well as me, if not better. In the cases where player knowledge could have outpaced me, I was supported by the very narrow scope of the campaign story and a focus on the story-relevant lore. Despite that, I am currently in the process of finishing up a Planescape game that has thrown that expectation all around. Before this campaign started, I was loosely familiar with the setting. I am generally familiar with all of the other planes of the core D&D cosmology. The big thing here would be learning Sigil, the City of Doors, the center point of the Planescape setting. A city separate from all else but the junction of all else, with portals connecting it to all of the other planes. Some portals are stable, others are random. The city is run by 15 major factions integrated into it. Also, the city is on the inside of a torus, a donut shape, with wacky gravity allowing you to walk all around inside it. Now, a few of the players knew some of the Planescape lore, while others only knew the elevator pitch to agree to this campaign over any other. The one thing for certain was that I was not comfortably atop the pedestal as the person who indisputably knew the most. Without a central campaign narrative set by a published work, we wanted to do a freeform campaign based on backstories and chosen actions. So, I don't know the general system the best, and I don't have a narrow strip of campaign-specific lore to bolster me. Naturally, this means that I must learn everything, all of it, immediately. Now, this doesn't work. I implore you, don't try it. In the end, I found a setting book to reference, a couple good websites for the big picture information, and then I cobbled together some basic information to act as a foundation for me and my players. With a major new setting like the City of Doors, I wanted as much flavor as I could without handcuffing the players to the setting at every turn. There were a couple things that should probably stay strict, but for the most part trying to wiggle what I could. For each of the factions, I outlined the basics of their core philosophy, where their headquarters were in Sigil, if they had a societal role, who allied and enemy factions were. Notably, not always reciprocated. You could have people thinking some factions were allies where the others didn't. There's that. And then also, finally, their plane of influence of what outer plane or the like that the faction held most to. I shared the list of titles of different ranks of faction members and things like that. From there, we would simply follow a handful of adventures trying to introduce elements of Planescape-specific lore while also just having random adventures to start our campaign. It was a lot of work, but hopefully the players enjoyed it. The problem came as we started to explore deeper threads related to characters and backstories. While some people say to avoid prime materials in a Planescape game, I wanted to embrace them, put them at the center of a larger planar plotline, and let the player characters choose to be from any plane or campaign setting. The idea was that it'd be tons of fun, and I'm pretty sure that's what the players have thought. The problem is when you have to then learn all of those lores as well. So you have cosmology, you have Sigil, and now you have every other possible campaign setting. Not my smartest move. The first prime our narrative took us to was Theros. If I knew little about Sigil, I knew nothing about Theros. Aside from it being a Greek mythology ripoff, I knew nothing. But that's fine. This isn't the campaign, it's just a few adventures, a few milestones, and then we'll be done. I don't think the players knew too much, so I'll just take the Forgotten Realms approach and learn a specific adventure and a little bit of periphery around it. Great, awesome, done. Now, sure, they'll come back a few times, but just to interact with the facets that they already know. Cram that lore like a high school test and move on. Get back to Sigil, get back to generalized plot lines in our wacky world space, have some fun in the city again to refocus us on Sigil for a while, and then hammer home on a deep, dark, devastating plotline that is going to set a fire in every character to go on a warpath in Krynn. Once again, good idea, Josh. Notably, I know nothing about Krynn. Again, if I knew general D&D cosmology as a basis for Planescape, and I knew Greek mythology ripoff for Theros, for Krynn I know 80s and 90s stereotypes of high fantasy fiction? I really know nothing. And while I had delayed this plotline until the 5e Dragonlance campaign was coming out, that book has very little for me to use aside from the basics of the new interpretations of the world space. Opposite of it, I have multiple players who know this lore like the back of their hand. They have read all the Dragonlance books. One of them specifically made a Dragonborn Twilight Cleric from Krynn, playing with the evil draconian tropes, and then chose an Eberron god of hospitality, embracing our weird Planescape mishmash to just really create this. I don't know. It was fun, but this is crazy. This is just everywhere. The knife that I had been playing with and flipping around this whole campaign has now just landed blade first in my hand. I am now firmly set in a situation where the players know oodles and caboodles more than me. While there's the argument that the Game Master has final say on world space and lore, I don't want to pull that card. I don't want to pull that card on the players excited to be in the space that they know so well. So how do I possibly handle this? Well, first off, I spoke to the core player. While this would be a slice of Krynn in our Planescape game, it would not be the same as a full Krynn campaign. They should still play that out on its own, whether me, someone else, they running the game as a game master themselves, whatever. But I could not do Krynn in its entirety justice. I was honest about not knowing much and willing to read up on the stuff that player wanted to explore in the story, and rather than competing with their knowledge, I essentially asked for guidance. From there, I chose not to oppose anything they say. If anything, I took a moment delaying answering player questions about the world. Without instruction to do so, if given the space, the players that know the answers to Krynn lore were excited to share what they knew. That lore is canon to the table. If I have built something that opposes it, I have the power to change it behind the scenes to match the knowledge that the players already have about this space. The narrative that I built was focused on the strip of knowledge I was comfortable with. The players could bring in other facets, but I built around what I knew. To ground this arc with something familiar, I then included a trio of NPCs that formed an allying party of adventurers that showed off aspects of the world space, kind of like I had done with highlights in Sigil. And I also included the keystones of 80s, 90s stereotypes to bring in at least a little bit of stable ground for me. With this, there would be a Solamnic Knight that was the complete expression of corny chivalry. There was a Wild Elf Druid that was basically played as a Wes Studi character, and then a red-robed wizard that also happened to be a Kender. Now, Kender have an awful history of players using the world lore to excuse bad behavior. In the lore, Kender have really no moral concept of ownership or stealing, and that their curiosity has them acquiring things from others almost accidentally out of their curiosity. That's my understanding of the situation. It is an in-world innocence that excuses player kleptomania. From my knowledge, it has caused problems for many RPG groups anecdotally. Obviously, the big gamers in the group will know this, and the Krynn fans will expect the lore. The moment I mentioned the Kender of the opposing allied party, the main PC for this story warned the other players about them. So how do I respect the lore, the players, and also desire to have these NPCs help the party? Any current players can skip to the next timestamp to avoid spoilers, but I'm pretty sure you've already figured this out. The Kender in the group is empowered by Schrodinger's kleptomania. At any given moment, he has both stolen and not stolen an object until the narrative hits a point to reveal if he has. No roles, no plans. When appropriate, he has stolen an object. At which point, it will be presented with an announcement along the lines of, hey, can I keep this? Based on his experience with his own party in the past, the Kender has to ask. He has to ask before the point of no return. Just as there are no roles for him to get the item, there are no roles for the party to get it back. It is an honest question, and however the PCs roleplay it, any desire to have the item back guarantees it. The key of it is that anything taken is not malicious. The goal of running this Kender in this way is for it to play into the expected lore without it being antagonistic. It is all for the story and nothing else. It is to allow for deep interactions to a poignant part of the world lore without antagonism. That kind of seemed like a tangent, but it is actually essential to the solution to the problem. How do you run a game when the players know the lore, the rules, the story better than you as the game master? Sure, the easy answer is to use the player as a resource. The rules lawyer becomes a system reference person to keep combat flowing. The lore keeper helps shoulder some of the world building work for you. Those are all great ways of internalizing your relationship with the players in a mutualistic way. I have a lot of players that do this for me, and I have a friend who graciously accepts my actually comments the few times that I get to play as a player myself. Thank you, by the way. But all of that doesn't actually prepare you to run the game. When it comes to running a game where the players know more than you, highlight it. Yes, learn more about the subject, whether it's mechanics or campaign setting, monsters or spells. Yes, do your reading, but on a session-to-session basis, you will have the things you prepared for and the things you didn't. Find the thin strips of information you need to learn about how to run the next encounter, the next story beat that you want to do, but from there, find ways to gently highlight your players' knowledge. Rather than trying to challenge what they know, let them express it in a way without intending consequences. If a player knows about an aspect of world lore, poke them. Without intending to beat them, poke the subject and get them to share it. Have an NPC ask deeper questions. If the player recalls marginal spells easily and brings up one that can solve a problem immediately, a way you didn't expect them to be able to solve the problem, let them explain it. As a group, explore where the spell actually falls short. It may be perfect for this situation, but find out why it's perfect here and what small tweaks to the situation would make it fail. I'm not saying make those changes now, but you'll know for the future, you'll have learned, and you'll be able to better accommodate running for that type of ability in the future. The key to this technique is allowing your players to share their knowledge in a safe environment. Finding ways of letting them shine will relieve that vent for when you get to the encounters you planned with the stuff you do know. Once again, from personal experience, I have had a friend behind the screen call me out recently with a, "Josh, I know you want to say something, and I'm trying to get better," but that ability for my friend as the game master to just know that I know something and I want to say something and making room, it makes the game better. This is a tangent off of the script that I wrote before beginning this journal, but I found that most of the here's this rules thing weren't for me. It was for another player that was having a problem, a player being frustrated that that's all they could do on their turn, and being able to point to something in Tasha's that goes, "Oh no, they fixed this. Here, this'll make it feel better." And because the game master was cognizant of that and willing to "Hey Josh, what do you want to say?" Providing that moment, I think made the game better. So yeah, Me personally transferring into player headspace, that is a skill that I have let fatigue, and I am working on it, and my game master is wonderfully patient with me, but with that, he is exemplifying a solution to a problem that I was having from a different end already. So, yeah, more than viewing the players that know more than you as just a resource, the way to actually prepare games is to have those two different modes. Yes, have the thing that you prepare to the best of your ability, but then also have that carrot that invites the players to speak about what they know. In addition to being a storyteller and challenge provider, being a game master is also being a director. You most likely won't know everything about your project, and it is your job to bring everyone's skills together to make the game better than any one person could do on their own. It may be as convoluted as a friendly form of kleptomania, or it may be as simple as calling a player out and directly asking them. And this is my SendingKenku. Managerial skills are not often taught, but you will need them. Learn them before you're in charge. It will make life easier for everyone.